I'm working on my 2007 PT Cruiser here. I'm going to be replacing the engine mount. I've got a new one sitting over here. Just give you an idea what this looks like. And this sets in that fender well over here on the passenger side, and then this bolt will come through, and you get a new bolt that'll come through the fender well here through the plug, and it bolts into that engine cover there. So it is quite a job getting to this. However, when these get in bad shape, it can get pretty bad, start causing rattles, and it could possibly be dangerous and snap the bolt off there. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so first thing, we've got a jack under here and position it here, and got us a jack stand. Now we're going to go ahead and get this wheel off here. Okay, I'm using a 19mm. Okay, with the wheel off, we've got this plastic flap we have to remove here, and we just have like 3 of these 10mm that are located right up in here, and we're just going to get up in there with this and get those out. There's a couple of snap pops and these plastic that need to be popped loose. Got one down there. We've got another one over here at the front, and we're just going to pop those loose and remove this plastic shroud here next. Okay, so we have it loose, getting ready to remove it here. I'm just going to pull it. Okay, here's the location of those 2 lower snaps, and there was one more going right into this side right here. So anyways, now we're in here. We'll go ahead and probably work on some of this lower stuff. We're going to go ahead and get us a jack underneath this oil pan under here, position it just right back in under here, and we'll go ahead and get that set up. Okay, so here's where we have our jack, just right there. Use a wooden block, and we're just going to focus our attention down here on what we need to remove on the lower for now. We've got a 15. I'm going to go ahead and just get on this tensioner right here, and we're just going to go ahead and slip this belt off, and then we'll go from here. Okay, we're going to take our 18 and get on this lower mount here. Now the upper and lower are in good shape because I just replaced those. And we'll just kind of get this out of the way a little bit for now. We don't need to remove it. Now we're going to go ahead and focus over here on this brace here. We're going to just get it out of our way. Okay, just taking this top bolt out, and the bottom one is just loose. I'm just going to put that back. Now while we're here, we're going to go ahead and get right up here. We're just going to loosen this off a little bit. Don't have to take it out. Just go ahead and loosen it off a little bit. Okay, with that bottom alternator bolt loosened up, we're going to go ahead and go up top now and get on the tensioner up there and the other 15. Okay, so we've got a 15 and a 13. We're going to come back here below this dryer for the AC, and we'll look down here and we can see the top of the alternator. We're going to first loosen the bolt that you see right there, or that nut right there. Just going to loosen that off a little bit. Okay, with that loosened, we're going to take our 13 and we're going to go down here, get on our tensioner, bolt. It's a 13. We're going to go counterclockwise. We're going to loosen this up, and we're just going to keep loosening until we can reach around and get enough slack to slip our alternator belt off. That's all we need to do right now. Okay, now I've got enough slack to slip that off there. And if you hadn't already, go ahead and disconnect your negative when you're working on this. Okay, we're back down here. We're going to go ahead and take our 19mm, and we're going to go ahead and take this bolt out right here. Okay, and I would recommend an impact doing this job. If you don't have one, you can devise a tool like a bar or something to get in here, fit in between these slots, some bolts or something. You know, you just have to kind of just improvise, and you'll need to hold this steel, or you'll have to get an actual flywheel lock to put on your flywheel. However, that's going to be more work than just devising a tool to just hold this right here. But if you got an impact, we'll take it right off, no problem. And there's that. Okay, you'll need, if you don't have one, you can go to like AutoZone, and they have loaner tools, and get you one that looks like this. It has these bars in it. You're going to be using this one. Basically, this just threads into here, and the bar goes in to here. Flips on that crank, and then we take this part and we just get it in here, and we have to kind of squeeze this together to get it to stay in place. We fit it into these slots. We're going to get this set up. Okay, and now I'm just getting ready to put this, thread this in, and I'll make sure the bar I put in there goes in that hole. I know it's centered up properly. And I'll also need, this bar is just like a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch too short. I'll have to add a little piece in once I get this broke loose good. Confirm that you got it on there properly, that it is in fact in there like it's supposed to be. And we're going to go ahead and get a socket, and we'll start tightening up on this. And then that's going to take and pull this crank right off. Okay, so I've run it down about as far as I can get here. Now I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to put this little piece into my bolt to give it that little bit more so I can pull it out. So I'm going to take this bolt completely off here now. Okay, so I'm just going to drop that in there like so, and we'll just get it right back in there. See, it's got enough. Once I got it broken loose, I'll use that. Okay, now we've got it run all the way down, and we are completely loose here. Now we can go ahead and carefully move our crank pulley and our tool here. Okay, now while we're also down here, we'll go ahead and we've got some screws. You use a Phillips or an 8mm. You've got a couple of them kind of hiding. You got one up here. They're hiding on top. But anyways, we've got like 4 of them here, and they're kind of, one of them's kind of up here. It's kind of hard to see, but I've got one. I was trying to point to it there, but anyways, we have 4 of them. We're going to go ahead and take those off while we're down here and get this lower. We're going to see if we can get this lower piece, just take it completely loose. And this is what I'm using, just a small little micro ratchet. Okay, this is what these look like, and you kind of have to feel for the up ones. Now I could wait until I get this mount loose and lower it, but I'm just trying to get everything while I'm here at it. I just having to kind of reach up here and feel for these things. Okay, now even though the front metal cover is on, we should be able to slip this right on down. This is just the lower piece of this. Okay, and I could show you on this engine exactly what I'm doing. See, these are these hidden screws that are right below this cover. So there's 4 of them. Here's the other one right over here. So you couldn't really see what I was doing there, but that's all I'm doing. I've took this and this little lower timing cover off for now, because it's gonna probably get in my way when I go to moving stuff around. Now I'm going to be replacing this engine mount. However, while I'm in here, I've got a timing kit. We're going to go ahead and slap that into place too. Right, now we're going to focus right here. We got this cap covering up our main engine mount bolt, and it can sometimes be stubborn. It's really a snug fit, but there that is. That's a T55. We've got the engine supported here with this, so while we're down here, we're going to go ahead and take this out and completely remove that T55 now. Okay, so there's what that looks like. We're going to be using in there. Okay, and there's that bolt. Okay, so now this is the last mount. Essentially, we got to get here. Got an 18, and we've got a couple of 15s. We're going to take and remove the 18 and those 2 15s there. Okay, there's our bolts out of the way. We're just going to wiggle this out of its place up here, and then we'll just flip it over this way. Just wiggle it up right through here. Okay, the engine essentially is loose here, and before we start lifting it up, we're going to go down here on the back of our AC compressor down here. We've got, you see that green and gray connector? It has a safety lock you have to pull out. I'm going to go ahead and get down there and take that loose, because as I go to lifting this up, it tends to get close to this fan, and we do not want to break that connector. So that is the next thing we're going to do right there. Okay, we're here at the front of the engine. If we look down here and see the power steering right here, we've got 3 of these 13 millimeters that are going through the back of this bracket down here. And what we're going to do, 2 of them are going through that front timing cover. We're going to go ahead and remove the 2 of them. And you can also remove some of this if you want to clear up. It does give you a little bit more room for moving this around. Or you can try to squeeze your arm down in there and get to them. What I'm going to do is go ahead and remove this grill, because it's just a few steps. We got some 7 millimeters holding this, and with the bolts out of this piece, we can clear up more room to be able to move this around. So I'm going to go ahead and do that at this point. There's those 4 7s out of the way. Yeah, you just kind of pop these locks down a little bit and then pull up. And we can just take and set this completely aside. We've still got 10 millimeters, 3 on each side. We'll go ahead and get all those out. Take this one right here. Depending on your model, you may have a little stud and a different type bolt, and this little sensor may be up here, so just depending on what model you got. Okay, now you can just lift this seal up a little bit, Get it out of the way. And then this will just lift up and off here. And you could either take it completely off, but make sure it'll mark the location of that with the marker before you do, or you can just set it down here like this. This actually gives us a little more wiggle room than what we had prior. And we could also, to give even more room, we could take and just lower this coolant a little bit by sucking some of this coolant out, and we can just take this loose right here and strap this hose up out of the way, and then it gives us a lot more room. But I can get in here and work with this, so I'm just going to leave this be for now. Okay, I'm using a small ratchet, and I'm just going right through here, just reaching down here and getting these bolts. And I'm just getting these two for now. And they're just coming right through this front cover. Okay, and there's what that looks like. Those two. There's one more holding it, and we'll probably take that out here in a little bit so we can move that pump and stuff around a little bit. Okay, so now essentially we have to raise this engine up so we can get to those 3 15s that are holding this front timing cover onto the engine. And you can see, you know, where they're located. So we have to get it up high enough to be able to get all 3 of these out. So that's what we're going to work on doing right now. Okay, you see about where I've got it lifted up to, where I can clear all these bolts, and I'm just using a small 3/8 ratchet because it fits down in here the best. And you can also, you know, use jack stands to help secure your engine while you're doing this. You want to definitely be safe. And you could also use rig up your lift if you've got a lift. But I've got them broken loose. I'm getting ready just to start taking these bolts out here now. Okay, and you can see with this lifted up like so, even the bottom bolt will slip out of here. So now we've got 2 of them. We just got the one back here in the back to get now. Okay, now we've got this completely loose here, but we're going to have to go ahead and wiggle it around and get it where we can work it up and out of here. And it requires a little flipping and flopping it. And we'll probably go ahead and remove that last remaining bolt from here so we can get this power steering loose a little bit. Okay, with the power steering bolts out, we're going to go ahead now and disconnect this temperature sensor for the coolant. Just pull that safety lock back and take that loose. Okay, now sometimes these little safety or these clips wear out, and just take you a little pick tool and lift up on it so you can get it off there. But, we're taking that loose so we're not accidentally getting over here and breaking that when removing this timing cover here. But we're just going to go ahead and try to work it up and out of here. And we'll also be taking this. We've got some 18s up in the front here. We're going to take this one. They got one more back at the back there, right back in here that you can't really see. Actually, it's already missing there. So we've got this one, we've got this one. We'll get those out. Okay, now we can go ahead and lift this piece up and off of here. Okay, and I'm looking at this timing belt. Doesn't really look that bad, but we are going to replace it. We're going to replace our tensioner and our little idler one right there too. Okay, so we're kind of coming out of here like this, and you just got to kind of wiggle and flip this thing around. It will come out every time, but it's a kind of a tight squeeze. Now you can see our bolts down here holding this. Now we're going to go ahead and take it loose, because I just want to show you how there's just not a lot of room here getting this thing out. And if I remember correctly, I think I had to take the timing belt off and some stuff to get the last one out, but we'll see what we can do with it, because I've got it lifted up. I'm going to see if there's still any way, but I don't think you can get it out without taking your timing belt and some of your pulleys and stuff. You just don't simply have the room to get it in and out. Okay, so I'm just using a 3/8 ratchet, 13 millimeter. And we're just working these out of here. Okay, I just wanted to show you, we do have the bolts out of this thing, but it's like almost, there's just not enough room to easily get it out of here. I mean, it will slip out, but it's just next to impossible to try to wiggle it through here. There's just not quite enough room to still squeeze it out, because it's just really tight. Even with the engine lifted up, there's not quite enough room down here to just slip it right out without really squeezing it through there. So what we're going to do at this point is go ahead and get our tensioner loosened, and we'll go ahead and take this tensioner out right here. Like, if you know, I'm going to be replacing all of it. On yours, you would probably want to go ahead at least take the tensioner itself out, and then simply, you know, make sure that you get it retensioned and tighten back up, because there's not enough room to slip this thing out without just fighting with it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we said, make sure if you're going to be taking the belt loose, make sure you can mark it. You know, some people will put marks on this and on the belt and whatever. You know, if you don't really know how to time these, make sure to put marks to put it back so you do not get it out of line. Okay, I just wanted to show you something here. Now if you come down here, it's kind of hard to see. You can see the arrow right here, and I put a little dot on the top so I can kind of show you this. If you look down there, you can see I've got like a little pink dot. Well, that was just as a reference. You can see like the gear nubs, the trailing edge of that is supposed to be in alignment with the arrow that is marked on the engine there. And as I'm looking at it, I can clearly tell that it's not. You can look at the gears right here and you can see the problem. These are not. We're going to go ahead and rotate it on around here. Okay, so I rotated on around again, and yeah, there again it's still not into alignment. These notches are supposed to be in alignment with one another. You can see the indentions right there, but it looks like it's at least a tooth or more off there. So I guess this belt had been replaced at one time. The reason the belt looks like it's in pretty good shape, but the timing is off just an ever the slightest there. And you know, the engine, it runs pretty good for the most part. I couldn't really tell. It had Sometimes it had a little bit of a sputter on the idle, which this could have something to do with that, but I was thinking maybe it just needed a tune-up, but we're gonna have to adjust this. This belt actually looks really good to me though. It looks like a really good belt. So I'm probably just gonna go ahead and put my new kit I've got on here though anyways, so I can replace. I think they replaced the belt, but it looks like that these haven't been touched, but I'm going to do that and get it lined back up, because with this said, right there where you see that pink dot, that gear's trailing edge is supposed to be in alignment with the arrow, and you can put a little bit of paint and clean these spots off. It makes it easier for you to see, but that's supposed to be in alignment, and then when that's lined up, these are supposed to be in alignment, and this should have been checked several times. When the belt was put on, it should have been rotated and checked, and this is not done correctly here, so this will need to be fixed. Okay, so I inserted the 1/4 inch and turned this clockwise to get the tension off of that, and then took a 13 and just took this completely out. Just a spring actuated tensioner, and I'm going to go ahead and get on this and remove this as well. I'm going to be replacing that too. Okay, that was a 18mm right there, by the way. And like I said, now even with that, I can slip this up here and get this out. I'm going to be taking this belt off as well though. But this ought to be the first thing that you put in when you're doing a timing job, because you will not be able to get to this thing. So that's the condition. See, it's cracking, and this is a Mopar, probably the original, 150,000 on this. So anyways, we've got a new one, and we're just gonna go ahead and get that into place there. It has locking bolts, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, we've got it setting in there, just getting ready to put these 4 13mm back in, snug these down really good. Okay, here's our timing kit. Now, if you weren't replacing the belt, you would just reposition your belt and tighten your tensioner, put your tensioner back on and tighten it up, but you do have to at the very least remove this thing. To retighten it, you know, it shows you on here, the arrow, you're going to go counterclockwise until this little notch right here, this spring tang is going to line up with this right here, and once it starts moving and lining up, you know that you got it in position there, you got the proper amount of tension. So I'm going to go ahead and get this replaced here. We're going to go 45 foot-pounds on this idler. This one here is only 220 inch-pounds. So once we get that, the proper tension, we're only going to go 220 inch-pounds on that. Okay, I got my new belt on here, and I'm just rotating around. I haven't turned the tensioner counterclockwise yet. Like I said, I'll use the 1/4 inch ratchet, insert it into that slot and do that. But I've got my mark down there on the trailing edge of the block, but I'm just not quite right up here. As you can see, I'm going to I need to go down a little bit on this side. Looks like a tooth, and then I'm going to have to do the same thing over there, because these are supposed to be in alignment. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't have it quite right. I'm going to do that, and then I'll rotate it again and see how close we look. Okay, so, and remember, the slack on this side is going to give you the most trouble in retightening this. So you just have to work it around, and sometimes you have to take your mark down here and actually go back counterclockwise a couple of teeth, and then get this kind of in alignment, and then by the time you turn, it'll take up the slack. You see, I'm pretty happy with this here. It's on the trailing edge down there on my mark, and I'm lined up a lot better up here, so I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and go 220 inch-pounds, but I've got to tighten that, or I've got to get my tensioner back into tolerance. So again, here's your tensioner. This is going to push around until you get it about right in there, but you're going to go counterclockwise. Okay, so I was just tightening that tensioner back. You have to have one of these mirrors in order to get down there to make sure that it's within tolerance. And we're also going to have to rotate everything a couple times to make sure that nothing moved on us. And also you have to raise this thing back up to be able to get your 220 inch-pounds to be able to fit your, or at least I had to be able to fit mine on there. I just didn't have clearance. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate it a few times, and we're going to double check the tolerance, make sure the tension's still right, and make sure that we're still on our timing marks. Okay, everything still looks good on that, so I said you'll want to torque that down to 220 inch-pounds, and everything still looks good. We're going to go ahead and get our cover back on here and just work on at this point, just putting everything back together. But you know, as you can see, quite a bit of stuff to get into this mount, and if your belt and stuff hasn't been done, of course you'll want to do that at the same time. And I didn't really touch on this a whole lot, but there's a lot of other videos, and I've got other videos on strictly on just the timing. Okay, we just put this piece back on first, and now we're getting ready to put our metal piece back in here and get our 3 15mm long bolts into that. Okay, so we've got this wiggled back down in here. Now remember that you got to get your power steering pump bolt started as well. Once you bolt this up tight, you won't be able to fit that power steering pump back in there, so we're going to try to make sure that it's at least into place before we really tighten this down. Okay, I've got all of my power steering bolts started in there really good. They're just kind of loose right now. I'm going to go ahead and start snugging down my 15s for this timing cover here now. Alright, with that front timing cover nice and tight, we're going to go ahead and slip this back on. Remember, it's got like a, that has to slip over the back first. Kind of slips over and then pushes forward. It goes into place. Alright, I reconnected my temperature sensor. Got this back on. We're going to go ahead and just lower this back down here now and start reconnecting some other stuff here. Okay, I'm going ahead and I've got this in alignment. I'm going to pull it a little bit. Got some Loctite on this. Now as it's coming down, sometimes it'll hang up on this, and you'll need to take a screwdriver, insert it, and kind of pop it back down if the motor tries to hang up. I'm just going to pull it back a little bit and get that started. Okay, so I went ahead and tightened that down, and we're going to go ahead and work on getting our pulley back on here. And unless you have a long bolt, you'll just have to tap it on as good as you can first before getting the bolt started, and then the bolt will go ahead and pull it down the rest of the way. And I put some Loctite on that. I'm going to put some Loctite on this one here as well. Okay, so we've just got that back on there. If you can hold it still, you can go 100 foot-pounds. I've just run it down with my impact, but it's getting too dark to see anything, so we're just going to get back on it in the morning and finish it up. So we've got the main engine mount. All we got to do is get our belts, alternator, get our other belts back on, and a few other things. We really don't have much left here to do. Okay, so we're back out here and we're getting ready to put the alternator belt on here first, and then we're going to go ahead and get our serpentine on there. So after we get this in place, we'll go ahead and work on getting our mounts. Like I said, we don't have just a few things to do here, and we're going to slip this on first, and then we'll get up there on our tensioner and get this tension. And I like to get it, I just go by feel, just to where it doesn't flex a whole lot. Okay, so now we're just going to take our 13 and get right down there and just turn that clockwise until that belt is good and snug. And like I said, I just go by feel and make sure it doesn't flex much, because then it'll start squealing and you'll have to go back and readjust it. Okay, so now we're just going to take our 15, we're going to tighten that top nut right there. Just go ahead and snug it down, and then we'll go ahead and snug down the lower one. Okay, we're just snugging up the lower right there. You can see this is good and tight, doesn't flex a whole lot. And we're going to go ahead and take our serpentine, work this on. I like to just feed it down from the top. Well, I've got this stuff out, this mount out of here. It's a little easier to slip it around this power steering first, and then just work it on into a little heart shape. Okay, and just confirm that everything's on the pulleys. And also, if you haven't changed any of your belts, this is a good time to do so. We're going to go ahead and put this lower mount on. You'll need to reposition your jack like I have here. Twist this around slightly. Doesn't take a lot of force. I'm just twisting it so I can get this hole here to line up, as you can see. So you just kind of got to work with it a little bit to get that to line up. Okay, now we're just going to put this brace right back up here. And just snug this down real good. Okay, so we got that bracket. While we're down here, we're going to go ahead and put this lower cover shroud piece into place. We just got the 3. And we're going to slip it back up in there, and then we'll use those little plastic buttons and pop them back down, and we'll be finished with this. Alright, so we got that shroud in place. We'll just go ahead and pop this tire back on here while we're at it. Okay, we're just getting ready to drop this mount back down in here and wiggle it into place. Get it setting up here, you can take a screwdriver, kind of pull it on up here a little bit, get it into alignment. We're going to get these here first. Sometimes you have to push down on this, make sure you get these started good and straight. Usually it's the top one or the front one here. This one that wants to get out of alignment said you will cross thread your bolts if you don't push that down a little bit to make sure it's going in straight. Make sure you get it started by hand before you go to tightening anyway. Get it started really well. Okay, I've just run these down, just kind of snugged them. They're not real tight. And now I'm going to go ahead and work this one. And like I said, you can take a screwdriver and just pull this whole entire engine here and get this thing into alignment. Get your bolts started. Okay, if you still have trouble aligning that bolt, take your jack with a wooden block, just reposition it back under the front here and just twist it a little bit more, and it'll pull it right into alignment. Okay, so we got that passenger mount on and snugged down good. We're just getting ready to go ahead and put our grill and stuff back on here, and there's nothing to this. We just slip it back up here into place, and they'll go right on to those. get our bolts back in that, and then get our bolt right back in here. Okay, we got that button down. We're going to take our little rubber seal and put it back around here. Okay, now we're just getting our grill back into place. Got those that slip down into those slots. And it'll kind of pop into place as well. We'll just get our 7mm back into these. Okay, so we got that back on. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect our negative cable. You know, if you lift this, it's kind of like a hinge, it will pop out of there easier, and same way putting it back. So we'll go ahead and tighten this down and we'll fire it up and see how it sounds. Okay, here we have it running. I'll have to take it and test drive it, but it sounds like that the idle may be a little bit better already. Just being that little bit out of adjustment can make a difference. And like I said, wasn't even planning on finding that. It's not the first one I've seen that was out of time, but wasn't even planning on finding that when I was in there. But it's just one of those things, you just deal with it as you go. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video on replacing that main engine mount. It is a pretty good little job, you know, a decent day's work or less, depending on how quickly you work. But you can see that there's not a lot of room in there, and you have to get into that time in assembly just to be able to slip that thing out with the engine in there. It's just too tight of a squeeze to try to get it out. But you know, if your timing has been replaced recently and you don't need to change the belt, then you'll just take it loose. You readjust your tensioner and put it back down. But if it hadn't been done, that's a good time to go in there and replace that belt and the tensioner and the idler while you're in there. Go ahead and take care of that and just knock that out, because you're already in there. You might as well do it. So anyways, it sounds really good right now. So we're going to test it out and everything. So that's going to conclude replacing this main engine mount, and I hope you found it helpful. As always, I invite you to subscribe and check out some of my other videos. I've got a lot of videos on these PT Cruisers, and I thank y'all for watching.